Good evening, everyone. How y'all doing out there? I hope you're doing real well. This is Jesse, coming at you with a Final Fantasy VII Remake video. Warning, spoiler alert, I will be discussing plot details. You have been warned. Zack and Cloud in the same timeline. What a thought, for better or worse. This extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence. For those of you who have not seen my previous video, here's the big reveal in a nutshell. Zack, in the final cutscene, is looking at the same Midgar as our heroes. He is no longer looking at his Midgar. He is looking at a bridge in space and time. To prove this, the first photo is from immediately following the Golden Orb explosion. Notice Sector 6's incomplete construction and Sector 7's wholeness. Also notice the lack of cranes on the highway. This second photo is from the final scene with Zack. Notice the damage to Sector 7's wall, the wholeness of Sector 6's wall. Notice the sudden arrival of so many cranes on the highway. This third photo is from our hero's standpoint in the same final scene. Notice the identical damage to Sector 7 and the wholeness to Sector 6. Both groups now look upon the same instance of Midgar. In the last video, I went into depth on how to explain this bizarre phenomena, with my conclusion being that Midgar has become a singularity in time and space for those people who were entangled by the Whisper's interfering actions, all being unmade simultaneously when we destroyed the Harbinger. Meaning, if the Whispers did not mess with you, you were not caught up in their time web, and you do not have to worry about this singularity. The most common question I've received in response is, how can a singularity, or the Harbinger, or anything, be equidistant to various points in time? Isn't time linear, sequential? This video attempts to answer that. Time, our unchanging ally. It's the intuitively understood construct that allows us to efficiently navigate our lives, the universe around us, and much of the meaning we give to all that we experience. From the phantasmagorical vicissitudes of a black hole's event horizon, to the heartbeat of definition when lovers hold each other, from the ping of a cesium atom to the Precambrian era. Like this pale blue dot, time is our witness to everything we've ever known. Time is a linear construct so embedded in our psyches that it makes up the grist of our dreams. It allows distances beyond our comprehension to be understood. Time is how we navigate our reality. It transcends even that. Time is our reality. It is how we measure ourselves. However, time is anything but unchanging. We all know who this guy is. In 1905, Albert Einstein turned the world on its head with his special theory of relativity. I highly suggest you check it out, it is eye-opening. Even in our universe, time is not a constant, at all. At the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, we bore witness to a wormhole, one that Sephiroth created to connect our hero's timeline to the singularity that the Harbinger sat in. A wormhole does not require deep thought, its operation is intuitive. The distance between 2 points is irrelevant. Your relative distance is the length of the wormhole. A wormhole and a singularity and the continuum of the Harbinger are all similar, except the latter two also bridge time. Like one voice in Cosmic Fugue. But what of time? How could anything connect to one event and be equidistant to another event that happens later? Is this anything also connected to the unmade future? In the Final Fantasy VII Remake universe, the Harbinger connects to all timelines and times necessary to ensure its own existence, which one can learn if they assess the big guy. However, where did this assurance come from? How would the Harbinger know which events to enforce? If you assess the 3 Mega Whispers in the Harbinger fight, their description states that they are from a future timeline. Not infinitely far into the future, but the future. Based on events leading up to that future, the Harbinger knows which events it needs to enforce. As a deviation occurs, for instance Aerith falling from the Sector 5 church, the Harbinger can use its infinite nature through the Whispers to course correct. based on its memory from that future timeline. However, the distance in time between all course corrects relative to the Harbinger and the singularity it sits in are all equidistant. Intuitively, from our human perspective, each course correction event is sequential. That's how we experienced it. That's the only way we understand our human notion of time. Yet, the Harbinger is not in any of these time spaces where these events occurred. The Harbinger is connected to them due to its infinite continuum nature, but its experience of time is from its own timeline. This means that 1,000 years could pass on Gaia, and literally no time would pass for the Harbinger. All events that took place in those 1,000 years to the Harbinger occurred at the same time. A more intuitive example. Imagine you're on a plane ride, and you daydream of being at the beach. When that daydream is interrupted, you turn to reading a book, drinking some water, and talking to your neighbor. Then you return to the daydream, picking up right where you left off. Why didn't the daydream progress in the 2 hours it took you to read, drink, and talk? Effectively, the daydream was in a different dimension. How much time you spent outside that dimension was irrelevant. Imagine Cloud was at that beach in your daydream. To him, all your actions outside that dimension happened in the same zero moment, meaning they happened simultaneously. It is possible using conscious logic. Cloud could figure out which actions came first, but from a time perspective, they all happened at the exact same zero moment. When our heroes destroyed the Harbinger, everything that it was connected to, everything we were told it was connected to if you assessed it, was simultaneously unmade, no matter the placement of it in our human view of linear time. Midgar was special. Unlike anything else the Harbinger interfered with, Midgar was a bubble in space-time, represented literally as a bubble that affected at least 2 timelines, Zack and our clouds. How does one unmake a bubble that bridges time and space? This is not so simple as undoing an interference action, for instance what the Whispers did to Biggs and Jesse on the pillar. From those photos, it seems the unmaking of that bubble became a singularity of sorts unto itself, as discussed in the last video. A point in space-time that is outside the constraints of timelines and time. This would mean that since Zack and younger Cloud are entangled in the Harbinger's interference pattern, as we saw, once they enter Midgar, they will be in the same timeline as our heroes, in the present as our heroes know it. Fortunately, our heroes will be halfway to calm by then. It would take a force majeure after that point for the 2 groups to happen to meet up. Our hero's story keeps its integrity. That's it, everyone. I hope this clears up how non-linear time would work and the repercussions of the existence of such a weird phenomena. Next video explores why Zack's scene was entangled in the Harbinger's interference pattern. It wasn't random or whim, but it was ingenious. Much love, all. Catch you all on the flip side. This is Jesse, signing off.
Distant vantage point. The Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on the mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam.